Okay, yeah, my name's Tom Harris. I'm a professor in economics and director of University Center for Economic Development. The main reason I wanted Fred to do these three podcasts we're doing is that a lot of us in economics do a lot of generation of numbers and data. Here's a location, here's the opportunities, but then what do you do with the data after that? And Fred has from U.S. University of Southern California has extensive knowledge in public administration, and he's going to talk on three topics. And we're going to have three podcasts covering areas that, after you've seen your economic data, after you've seen us as economists talk about trends, what do I do with it? And there's certain things that cities, counties can do that he's going to be talking and addressing today.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Dr. Harris, for having me here today. My name is Frederick Steinmann. I'm an assistant research professor here in the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I currently work with Tom Harris in the University Center for Economic Development. And today I'll be talking about special assessment districts as outlined in Nevada Revised Statute, Chapter 271. As Tom mentioned, one of the real challenges that we have in the world of economic development and really just kind of community development in general is how do we finance the various improvements that we're going to make to our communities. This can be in the form of additional infrastructure, in the form of public facilities, or even general public services. And as we know, economic development and new private sector development requires support of the public sector through infrastructure, through services, through facilities, in order to support that development moving forward. So my very brief conversation today really focuses on one of a number of different financing techniques that is permissible to municipalities and counties under Nevada state law, and specifically under Nevada Revised Statute Chapter 271. NRS Chapter 271 covers specifically the statutes and governing protocols for the establishment and utilization of what is called a special assessment district, or SAD. Also under NRS Chapter 271, you have what is called the Commercial Area Vitalization Project, or CAVP, and the Tourism Improvement District, or TID. Now, the CAVP was actually kind of modified 2 legislative sessions ago when the legislature made changes to NRS 271, allowing for the establishment of business improvement districts, or BIDs. Really prior to this new legislation and the revamping of the Commercial Area Vitalization Project, Nevada really suffered from the lack of a true business improvement district technique that the public sector can utilize to support small business development, entrepreneurial-based development, and just general commercial development in more established built urban environments. The Tourism Improvement District, of course, came out of the legislative session of about, I believe, 2005. And I'll be talking about tourism improvement districts in a separate podcast as the establishment process and utilization of that tool, the Tourism Improvement District, and the subsequent STAR bond legislation, or sales tax anticipated revenue bond legislation, is pretty unique and probably deserves its own focus as well. So for today, I'm really going to be focusing on the general establishment process and powers and abilities of the Special Assessment District itself. Now, in general, again, the Special Assessment District, like general improvement districts, tax increment areas, tourism improvement districts, redevelopment districts, and a number of the other financing tools, is, well, nothing more than a financing tool. It is a process, again, outlined in Nevada Revised Statute 271 that allows municipal governments and county governments to really kind of localize the cost of providing specific services, be it infrastructure, facilities, or just general services, specifically to property owners that are going to benefit the most from that improvement facility or service. And that's a really kind of key hinge point in the utilization of the Special Assessment District, in that it's geographically based. A lot of services, excuse me, And a lot of infrastructure and facilities that a municipality or county will provide can really be localized to property owners who are going to benefit it from the most. So if I were to say build a new fire station next to the University of Nevada, Reno on say Virginia Street, it's unlikely that property owners in, Stead or South Reno or even, the kind of Virginia Street Midtown area are really going to benefit from having that new fire station built adjacent to the University of Nevada, Reno. It's really going to be the property owners in the immediate vicinity of that fire station that are going to reap the true benefits. So if I can localize those benefits of the infrastructure, the services, the public facilities that I'm going to build as a municipality or a county in Nevada, then it makes sense that those property owners who benefit the most from that asset should pay a higher cost or a higher percentage of that total cost of building that facility. And that's what the special assessment district allows us to do. It allows us to localize the cost of those benefits of public investment in order to benefit property owners within that defined geographic area. We've also seen that the special assessment district, along with all these other financing tools, is a good way that municipalities and counties can essentially protect their general fund. And of course, in the last decade or so, really going into and coming out of the Great Recession from 2008-ish to 2010-ish, it became increasingly important for local governments in Nevada to figure out a way to protect their general fund. Most municipalities and counties in Nevada are heavily dependent upon really two revenue streams, and that's property tax and sales tax revenue. And coming out of the Great Recession, we saw, and I'll show in a little bit, just how vulnerable those revenue streams are to major economic downturns. And of course, over the last year, as we as individual communities and the state and the country continue to deal with the economic impacts of the recent COVID-19 global pandemic, again, that type of economic decline has really underscored the importance that municipalities and counties need to embrace in terms of protecting their general fund revenue. We'll talk about those impacts in a minute or two. It's also important to keep in mind that the Special Assessment District is also a vehicle in which we can formalize the relationship between the public sector, a municipality or a county, and the private sector. Certainly, public-private partnerships are nothing new. They've been used since the inception of the United States, and they can come in an almost infinite variety in the way in which we structure those relationships. But any private development, a new housing project, the development of a new commercial shopping center, the development of a new industrial manufacturing center, or even just localized on a city block, new condominium tower, a new hotel tower, a new office tower, is going to require municipal and county services in order to work, right? You need to hook up that development to existing infrastructure, be it the road and street network. You're going to need sidewalks, curbs, gutters. You're going to need municipal sewer services and water services. You're going to need police protection, fire protection. You're going to need all the things necessary, right, to support that private development moving forward so that people can utilize it and that it can be utilized in a way that will produce economic value for the community. On the public sector side, the public sector doesn't necessarily want to provide that infrastructure and maybe additional services or facilities and have all taxpayers essentially bear the cost of it. The Special Assessment District allows the municipality and county to ensure that that private development pays for the cost of development of the infrastructure, facilities, and services that that project is creating as well. So again, it's a financing tool that allows us to localize the cost of these improvements. It's a financing tool that can protect a municipality's and county's general fund and can be thought about as a way to formalize the public-private partnership. that is commonly used in the world of community and economic development. Now let's talk about really that second bullet point, the need to protect general fund revenue. This is a fairly rough chart that shows the collection of total property tax revenue collected by all Nevada counties, so that's Carson City and all the other counties combined, from fiscal year 2007 and 8 all the way to the last most recent complete fiscal year 2019-20. And the first two fiscal years, 07-08 to 09-10, shows the Great Recession. It was late 2008 where the housing bubble burst in the United States and certainly here in Nevada. And that was the start of the national, then global financial crisis. And you can see, at least on the bottom curve, which is Nevada State Real Gross Domestic Product, or GDP, a fairly sharp decline in GDP from fiscal year 07-08 to 09-10. What is even more significant is the decline in property tax revenue that was collected by all counties, and not just in the recessionary period, but you can see after fiscal year 2009 and 10, property tax revenue for all counties combined in the state of Nevada fell between 09-10 and 10-11, continued to fall into the next fiscal year, and fell another fiscal year into fiscal year 2011 and 12. In fact, if we extend that curve out to the last previous fiscal year 19-20, we see that property tax revenue collected by all counties statewide has yet to recover after 10 years of strong economic development and growth throughout the state to its fiscal year 08-09 high. So what does this mean? Well, given that property tax is a primary revenue stream for Nevada's counties and municipalities, we saw the impact of the Great Recession in that it has taken a decade plus really for those property tax revenues to decline from the previous recession. Now, of course, if we were to kind of extend this logic, we would expect a similar decline beginning in this fiscal year or the next fiscal year in terms of property tax revenue collected by municipalities and counties due to the COVID-19 related recession that the state has had to endure. So again, municipalities and counties have a real strong incentive, right, to find alternative financing vehicles that protects these really scarce and to a certain degree a declining resource moving forward. We see a similar kind of trend in the world of the sales tax revenue. Again, this is the other of the two primary revenue streams for local municipalities and counties. And this is total sales and use tax revenue, all sources for all Nevada counties combined. Again, over the same period from fiscal year 07-08 into fiscal year 19-20. The good news is sales tax revenue tends to recover much quicker than property tax reasons. And unfortunately, we don't have the time really to get into why that is. Nevada's fiscal system, especially on the property tax, is very much a black box. And it's very complicated to get into the weeds. Suffice it to say, property tax revenue takes a much longer time to recover than sales tax revenue in Nevada as a result of an economic downturn or recession. But again, in recessionary periods, it takes a toll on both property tax and sales tax revenue. And you can see that, again, it can take many years for even the sales and use tax revenue to recover from an economic downturn. But again, if we look at the post-recessionary period, beginning after fiscal year 2009-10, the state of Nevada in our more populated centers like Washoe County, Carson City, and Clark County saw major economic growth and population growth. New development, be it residential development, commercial development, manufacturing, warehousing, tourism, hospitality. And though that trend of new development and growth increased the demand for public services and new infrastructure as well, But this was at a time over the last decade of recovery where municipalities and counties were still struggling, right, to see true recovery in their property tax and sales and use tax revenues. So we have seen over the last decade an increase in the use of special assessment districts and other financing tools, again, as a way to protect the general fund of municipalities and counties, and as a way of localizing revenue streams for the cost of the infrastructure that new development generated. In fact, over the last decade, we've seen the number of active special assessment districts increase dramatically. In the last fiscal year, 2019-20, there were 88 approximately existing special assessment districts. And a number of municipalities and counties throughout the state are right now, as we speak, considering the development and establishment of new special assessment districts, again, as a way to protect their general fund and generate the revenue needed in order to support new infrastructure, facilities, and services moving forward. So you're probably wondering, well, at least I hope you're wondering, how you go about creating a special assessment district or the subsequent business improvement district, the former CAVP component, or even a tourism improvement district. It's really a very straightforward and simple administrative process. This usually begins with the municipality or county government, either on its own initiative or at the request of a property owner or a group of property owners, to designate a specific geographic area for consideration. At that point, per the statute, the city and county or city or county engineer is usually designated the tentative assessment district coordinator. This is usually done by a provisional order resolution. And they're going to go through the process in step 2 of completing a fiscal and economic impact study. They're going to try to get the most accurate estimation of what the costs of certain infrastructure, facilities, and services are going to be to support development within that defined geographic area that has been deemed and designated an area for consideration. And then from there, they're also going to determine just how much revenue can potentially be developed and generated through the establishment of a special assessment district. Once the fiscal and economic impact study is complete, usually the next step is the public hearing process, where the local city council or the local board of county commissioners, whoever the public body, elected public governing body is for that designated study area, during a public hearing is going to develop and essentially go through the process of reading and adopting an ordinance that will establish the special assessment district, or underneath NRS 279, the old CAVP or new business improvement district, or even tourism improvement district itself. And then, assuming that it successfully passes with a majority vote, then you get to work. You start to generate your annual budgets for the duration of the special assessment district, and then go through the process of generating those revenues, collecting those revenues, and then utilizing them to pay for infrastructure, developing the facilities, and providing the services moving forward. Post-process, once that's done, again, you just essentially go through the annual administrative processes like you would any other type of district or government entity. It is important to understand that the special assessment district is not a tax. It's not a sales tax. It's not an ad valorem tax. It's an assessment. It's essentially a fee that is imposed on property owners or even individual businesses that exist and operate only within that designated special assessment district geographic area. That's important because unlike most other financing tools, the assessment rate that is charged via the special assessment district is not subject to the property tax cap that exists within the state constitution, or a prevailing sales tax rate. If you're using a general improvement district, if you're using a tax increment district, if you're using a redevelopment district, anything you do is restricted by existing property tax rates as well as existing sales tax rates. But because the special assessment district assessment is not a tax but a fee, you're not subject to that limitation. Special assessment districts also kind of work backwards in the way we traditionally finance local government infrastructure, facilities, and services. Unlike traditional budgeting, where you start with an estimation of revenue, and then from there, you begin to estimate how much you can spend to cover certain costs. We start the other way in special assessment districts. We first begin with an estimation of what the costs are going to be for the coming fiscal year or calendar year, however you establish it, for the provision and maintenance of infrastructure, facilities, and services within the district. And once you've identified what the total cost is going to be on that annual basis, you then apportion that cost based upon whatever apportionment scheme that you've come up with to individual property owners and or potential businesses within the defined SAD area. And that's useful and helpful because, again, you're starting with cost certainty as well as revenue certainty. And you can apportion this any way you want. You know, if, again, my fire station example, you could set it up so that property owners closest to the fire station in the SAD pay a higher amount, you know, on a per annual basis, you know, say $40 a year, as opposed to someone who owns property further away in the SAD from the fire station. Maybe the person further away only pays $10 a year. Or you could do it on street frontage. You could do it by total square foot of individual parcels. You could even, for businesses in a business improvement district, you know, place the cost based on a revenue estimate. So again, it's critical to understand that the SAD is not a tax, it's a fee. And individuals who live within the SAD typically buy into the SAD. Developers are starting to use it as an incentive to sell their property, to say, hey, as a property owner, you may be buying into this area, into this new housing development or leasing space in a commercial building, but so you know there's an existing SAD and you're going to be charged a little bit extra every month so that your roads are maintained, so that you have immediate police and fire services, or you have access, you know, direct access to different public facilities and services. Typically, SADs have, you know, been more property based and property tax based. Kind of looks like an ad valorem tax, but it isn't, with some exceptions where a more sales tax revenue type structure has been utilized. But mostly it's done on a parcel basis. Again, the SAD itself is typically managed and directed by the local government that established it. So if it's a special assessment district in, say, the city of Henderson, the City of Henderson City Council is going to be responsible for oversight and administration. If it is established in the unincorporated parts of Lyon County, then the Lyon County Board of County Commission is going to be primarily overseeing it. Of course, these elected bodies tend to designate an overseeing organization or entity to handle the assessments and the collection of fees and its administration moving forward. Annual reports per statute must be provided to the local government, and typically local county assessors are used for the assessment and the collection, although there's been a growing trend to kind of outsource that to private firms that specialize in assessing and collecting fees from special assessment districts and other similar financing vehicles. There are a number of benefits beyond just localizing cost and protecting your general fund and formalizing a public and private sector partnership. You can utilize SAD revenue to bond against, and again, that comes from the cost certainty that you start with in this budgeting process. and then establishment creating a revenue stream to match those costs on an annual basis. You can spend them annually as the assessment district coordinator determines, or to a certain degree, you can bank them and save those revenues and resources if you're saving up for building like a community center or making improvements to a local school, and you don't necessarily want to go through the process of bonding for that revenue. And then you can utilize those funds as long as it's authorized within the establishing documents approved by the city council or county commission for general improvements, acquisition, demolition, rehabilitation, and even other property improvement programs that may directly benefit the private sector. But because it's going to help generate new property and sales tax revenue in a general sense and new economic activity and new employment opportunities, there certainly are opportunities to use SAD revenue in that general as well. I won't get into the CAVP too much. I just kind of outlined what the general powers of the commercial area vitalization project is under NRS Chapter 271. Again, a lot of this was updated and revised 2 legislative sessions ago at the time of recording of this podcast to really kind of morph it into a more true business improvement district. But even under the kind of rewritten business improvement district authorizing statutes under 271, these powers still hold true. You can use those revenues and resources to do all sorts of stuff. Build and maintain public restrooms, do streetscaping, facilities or equipment needed to support activity within the district. Additional infrastructure, ramps, sidewalks, plazas, streets, curbs, sidewalks, just general street beautification. And in the case of the city of Reno and their new downtown business improvement district, they're utilizing exactly this authorizing statute to fund those improvements that directly benefit downtown Reno residents and businesses to essentially shield those individuals who may live outside the district and never benefiting from those expenditures from having to bear a portion of that cost. Other things or programs that you can utilize this revenue for, certainly acquisition, assembly, demolition of property, and that's especially gets pricey when we start looking at redevelopment and revitalization and urban infill. We've seen SADs and the revenue that's generated from them to essentially leverage that resource with the resources of other economic development groups, local chambers of commerce. We've seen SADs in Nevada be used to finance revolving loan funds designed to clean up or mitigate brownfield contaminations. Even marketing campaigns have been funded by SADs in order to generate activity within the SAD, or now the Business Improvement District, moving forward. So that's special assessment districts in NRS Chapter 271 in a nutshell. There's certainly more to it in the nitty-gritty details. But again, as we've seen over the last decade, there's growing interest by local governments in the utilization of special assessment districts as a way to finance and structure public-private partnerships moving forward. Really quick, my email is very, very simple. It's simply Fred, F-R-E-D, @ unr.edu. So Fred at unr.edu.
All right. Well, thank you, Fred. We'll get this posted up shortly and look forward to the next ones over the coming days.
Looking forward to it.